Module, we're going to configure mobile device management. We're going to take a look in this module, 3 elements: setting up the control panel for device management, connecting an Android phone to Google Apps, and finally, approving the device. I've logged into my Google Apps domain, and we're going to take a look at setting up the mobile device management features in Google Apps in the control panel. First, I'm going to set up an organizational unit because mobile device management policies can be set to an organizational unit. So I'll select Organization and Users, and I'll select Add a Sub-Organization. And this will be called Corporate HQ. Now that I've created the organization, I'm going to find a user and place them in that organization. So here's my user, Andy Android. I've selected that user, and I'm going to move them to the Corporate HQ and move them to that org. Now I'll validate that the user has been moved. I've selected the Corporate HQ organizational unit, and in there we see Andy Android. The reason I set that is we want to set the mobile device management policy for the Corporate HQ organization, and any user under that will follow that policy. So now let's take us to the mobile device management section, which is Settings, then on the left-hand side, Mobile. Now we have the Corporate HQ selected automatically under Organizations, and these are the policies that are going to apply for the users who are in that organization. We see Android, we see Google Sync. So Android for the Android devices, and Google Sync for ActiveSync devices such as Windows Mobile and for iOS devices. In this example, Andy has an Android phone, and that's what we're going to take a look at to manage. We're going to enable Android Sync for those users, and we're going to enforce the policies. So the policies that we create, we're going to set that. Next, we're going to require the users to set the password on their device. And we can see here I can have it strong or just any standard character, minimum number of characters, and I can also set the number of days for this password to expire. The next thing is number of expired passwords that are blocked, and I can also lock the device after so much time. Further, I can set the number of invalid passwords before the device is wiped. If the Corporate HQ organization is a sub-org, I can inherit from the master org. Encrypting the data on the device is something one needs to be very careful about before selecting. Now, Andy Android, I'm not sure which version of Android phone he has, and thus I am not sure if his device actually supports encryption. So I'm going to deselect it. Why? Well, my organization does not require people to have encryption, and I do want people to still be able to authenticate to Google Apps and get their mail, calendar, and contacts on their device. If I had selected Encrypt Data on Device, and Andy Android's phone does not support encryption, he will not be able to sync up to Google Apps with his device. So I'm going to deselect encryption. I will allow automatic syncing when roaming, and I will also allow the camera on his device. Let me go ahead and save those changes. I can enable the application auditing, which will give me a list of the applications that are on that device. I can allow the user to do remote wipe, and I can enable device activation. Now, I like to enable device activation, and the reason is I want to not only allow the user to sync up to Google Apps in my domain, but I also want to actually approve that they are allowed to sync up. There might be some users in this org that are not going to have the ability from a business perspective in my organization to sync up to Google Apps. And then I'm going to send myself a notification. So just as a reminder, I can send a notification to myself for users who sync up to Google Apps. Now, because I've enabled device activation, that means once the user syncs up, they will not be automatically able to sync their data to Google Apps. What will happen is I, as the administrator, will have to approve them. Now that I saved my changes, I can then now test this on the actual device.